right, thank you everybody for coming to the Wonzimer Gallery. It's a pleasure having you all here. We're going to have Peter Frank talk a bit about the work and his relationship that he had to the artist and just the technique that the artist used, and get a little more in depth with this exhibition that we're having here. Yeah, thank you for being here, Peter.
Thank you, Thank you. I was pleased to curate this exhibition, impressed as I was with the work and the person of Davood Roostaei. I only regretted that it was a memorial show, that in fact this charming, humble, driven man who turned out such peculiar, exquisite, almost like stained glass paintings, a kind of cloisonnism of another era. I only regretted that I was putting together a show of his finally as a memorial show. Not several months after we met, and I visited his studio and met a couple more times, he was gone. A victim of colon cancer that hadn't been previously detected. Some of his last paintings are in the show, but he didn't face his end with trepidation or fearlessness or anything else. He just approached it as a painter, having this much more time to get stuff done. And the show, consisting mostly of works from the past couple of years, doesn't have a sense of finality about it, but a sense of pause. That this kind of energy goes on and will reframe differently in different contexts and in different studio practices. Davood's own studio practice, and I'm sure that you've seen this, you've noticed this, resembles a lot of other people's on the surface. In fact, when I first saw images of his work, I thought, oh boy, another paint dripper. But I then took a second look and it was startling how compelled I was, not just by the compositions, by the colors, by the images that were struggling to emerge and struggling to hide, but how the drips themselves were crucial to this expression of fluctuation in visibility. That this ongoing magic of seen unseen in Davood's painting was a result of this dripping. He wasn't just another Pollock painting another mosquito netting. He was taking it somewhere else, or I should say, using it to go somewhere else. Davood's method, as he himself called it, was cryptorealism, where the picture he started with was totally hidden behind the structure, not the picture, because there is no picture left, but the structure that you see on the canvas. That the images of warriors and diners and people in conversation, seducing one another, looking at one another, going off into a landscape overwhelming people, all these dynamics motivate, and plenty of commentary on political matters of the day, all buried beneath that skein of painterly drips, molded into total or near abstraction, patterns of color and form, maps of imaginary places and worlds. And the next thing I found out was that he did it all by hand, literally. I should say by fingers. As you saw in the film in the other room, he painted using his fingers, all 5 digits on each hand. Actually, only one hand. He only painted with one hand at a time, molding the images and obliterating them with drips from his fingers and modeling from his thumbs. Essentially building up as well as tearing apart scenes from a world, worlds from a universe. Davood's painting was much more convincing than it should have been. It's not conventional work by any means, but there's an element of almost the circus in his work. He was something of a showman, but he didn't want to entertain us so much as grab our interest, to share this kind of energy with us. And he wasn't egotistical about it. He wasn't one of those artists who said, look at me doing this. He was painting in a way that said, look at this. As if he wanted to obscure his personality, his presence, from the presence of the work itself.
Could you go over his history a little bit and then kind of talk about how you met as well?
Well, I'll do that backwards.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we met very, very simply. Somebody turned his friend on to me. The friend contacted me, arranged a studio visit once I'd studied the images. Made the studio visit, was more than suitably impressed, and agreed to write an essay about Davood that would subsequently appear in White Hot magazine. We became friends from then on, and I was hoping to get another chance to sit down with him over tea or a meal or something, and he was gone.
No, I see.
But where had he come from? Obviously Persian-born, outside Tehran, but he went to Tehran for art school. And at the age of about 19, his studies were interrupted by the revolution. Like most young people in Iran at the time, he was inspired at first by the revolution, but quickly soured on its dictatorial bents, as well as its religious conservatism. And took up street art, took up graffiti as a way of countering the regime. As a result, he wound up spending 2 years in prison. And prison was never a good place to wind up in Tehran, no matter who was ruling the country. But after a couple of years, he got out of prison, I think it was 1981, and he fled to Germany, winding up based in Hamburg practicing this kind of work, influenced by the German neo-expressionists, Anselm Kiefer most of all, but others like Baselitz and Penck, also in his purview. But this work doesn't look like that work. It feels like it. This was it. The style was his own. His sensibility was his own. He was very successful over there, but followed a path of success that as much skirted as fed off the art world in Europe. He had several critical and gallery supporters. But gradually, he became tired of that discourse and looked for new areas of exploration, new areas of discourse. So he moved to Los Angeles in 2000 and set up shop here. And for the longest time, attracted only the most local of attention. He had collectors and an audience up and down the West Coast. In fact, Vancouver, he did very well in Vancouver. But it took his friends a bit of time to focus their push to bring him back to the surface. And that's what was going on last year when I was contacted, and that's what was going on earlier than this year when he passed away.
Can you speak about what led to this exhibition?
Essentially his passing away.
Yeah, so in a way it's a tribute.
It definitely is a tribute. He had several exhibitions planned with, or in discussion with both commercial and non-commercial spaces. None of those discussions have been canceled, but they've obviously been interrupted by his passing. So this exhibition it's all work from one collection, or almost all. There are one or two other collections represented, but it's basically one of the best local collections of his work. And this exhibition will not be the last we see of him, of his work. I only wish you were here to share the experience with us.